Uh, Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Red Devil Experience. How you all doing? Hope everybody is doing well. My name is Eric. I am the host of today's show and every show, pretty much. Um, we're gonna get into a topical discussion today. Not too much news, not too much things that we necessarily need to talk about, but I think there's an important thing that we need to talk about, and that is Manchester United's INEOS and Ruben Amorim problem, and maybe a potential thing for, will United take back Marcus Rashford, since there seems to be a lot of talk about Marcus Rashford. He just made his debut for Aston Villa, just played. So we're going to get into all that. Please smash the like button if you can, because it helps a lot and we greatly appreciate it. If you could do that, helps us out, gets us pushed out there. And if you're new and you like the channel, then please subscribe and make sure you turn on the notification bell. Let me just edit some things here and I think we're all right. Okay. So, yeah, there you go. The microphone was a little bit weird. So, Manchester United and INEOS's problem, and Ruben Amorim. I think we need to talk about this. I've been listening to the community. Obviously, we had a week off. We weren't able to do live streams as regularly as we like to do, and I've been doing a lot of listening. I've been doing a lot of sort of watching throughout the fan base, prominent accounts, people with fan channels. I've been listening to their opinions. I've been listening to, the issues, the problems, things that people, Manchester United fans have been discussing about. And I think it's becoming pretty clear that there is an issue with INEOS and there is an issue with Ruben Amorim. And we're going to kind of get into that and break that down in today's show. I want to start off by talking about let me just pull up my notes because I have a couple notes things. One of the things that I've heard that I wanted to kind of discuss and bring in is that Manchester United always talk about the project, and the project is the next 3 or 4 years, and we try or we attempt, and maybe we don't do such a good job, but they always talk about the next 3 or 4 years. We're having a project we're building for the next 3 or 4 years. It's going to take 3 or 4 years, but in reality, when we aim for 3 to 4 years, everybody else seems to progress around us as well. So when we get to the end of the 3 years or the 4 years, where we think we'll be good enough, but because we didn't do a good enough job, we didn't do an exceptional job, we didn't pull it off. And when we get to the 3rd or 4th year, we are far behind everybody else that we were aiming for, because their 3 or 4 years were either just as good or better than ours, which means that we didn't make any progress on them. And I think it kind of fits into the project that we're looking at now, the project that INEOS is supposed to be doing at Manchester United. And, I think INEOS have certainly created a mess. INEOS, so far, I think there's more negatives than positives. I think the negatives are certainly outweighing the positives. I think one of the things that, has been highlighted a lot this week throughout the United fan base is that they made a big mistake in forcing Ruben Amorim to come to Manchester United in the middle of November. And it was a mistake because, as we seen as a close to the January transfer window, we signed one player, which is Patrick Dorgu, who, by the way, I didn't get to fully watch the match on Friday. I saw bits and pieces. I saw the goals pretty much, but I can't dive deep into the full 90 minutes because I wasn't able to properly watch it. But, I saw Xerxes get the goal. I saw Maguire's offsides goal, which we were lucky there's no VAR. And I've been arguing that there should be VAR. And I think it's stupid that there's no VAR. And whatever the reasoning is, I don't buy it. Get the VAR in there for the smaller teams somehow. Figure out a way. Because I think it's stupid that we play all these matches with VAR. You get into these rounds. A big team can be playing a big team and there's no VAR. And obviously it doesn't make sense to have VAR in one game and not VAR in another. They should all be there. So we were a little bit lucky. We were fortunate that there was no VAR, because that goal would have been chalked off for sure. But sometimes you need a little bit of luck. Sometimes we've been dealt losses with being unlucky. So, I can't talk too much on the performance, but INEOS, I think they certainly have created a big issue and a big problem right now, as it stands right now. Now, again, we've talked about this a little bit before, and we say that maybe it'll pay off in the long term, and I hope it does, but there's no guarantee. And INEOS, they certainly have made a mess of this situation. I think they thought that, like Grace mentioned one time on the channel, and she asked me, do you think that INEOS thought that pretty much that the players were underperforming and that Ruben Amorim would be able to turn it around? And I answered her and I told her, yes, I do, because I do really believe that they thought that a majority of the problems, they knew there's squad issues, they knew there's personnel issues, but I think they thought, or they put majority of the blame on Erik ten Hag and his coaching staff, and that is the reason why the players were significantly underperforming. And maybe they were, but I think where they made a big mistake is they didn't take into account that the team is clearly set up to play in a 4-2-3-1 counterattack. It's almost like reactionary and not proactive football. And if we got another manager to play in that sort of way, I don't think we would necessarily be in this similar situation that we find ourselves in, where we're putting in performances. The performances don't look good, and either way, they don't look good. They don't look good when obviously we lose, but they don't look good when we win either. And we're certainly struggling. And the whole project right now under Ruben Amorim is struggling. The team is struggling in terms of a whole. And the club is struggling. The club is struggling financially. The club is struggling with their identity. And it's sort of just a mess all around. And I think that a key thing that they overlooked was, it's fine if you're going to sack the manager to bring somebody else in because you think that the players are underperforming and the manager's not necessarily getting through to the players to turn those poor performances around. But I think they really overlooked that this guy plays a totally different system with a different formation. And I don't think the formation is that much of an issue. I think it's the system, the demands of the system, and the quality of players we have. And I think they highly overlooked it. And which has created the situation of, we had a team that was playing bad. We then bring in a manager to change everything in the middle of the season, who's not going to get the time that he needs to properly prepare the squad in the middle of a season. And, they have to get blamed for this. They deserve to get blamed for this, because it's one thing, if the fans, we say it, it's fine, or we think it, because we're not in charge and we can have an opinion. We can have a wrong opinion. We can have, we can think wrong things, because it's not going to permanently impact the club based off of things that we believe. And we constantly change it and stuff, but they are the people in charge of the football aspect, and decisions that they make have lasting impacts. And I think one of the things that is a big problem that I have an issue with is that decision that they made, because we all know that Ruben Amorim asked to come in the summer. I think Ruben Amorim was very aware. Most managers are very aware. They don't, there's not many managers that they like to take jobs in the middle of the season. A lot of them wait for the end of the season so that they can get, the summer transfer window is always a better window than to go into the January window, regardless of what club you're at. And also, you get a proper preseason. You get more time to evaluate. There's less pressure on you because it's a little bit more quiet, right? You get a preseason. You get more training behind the scenes. You're not doing things in between matches. You're not playing 3 matches a week. So, INEOS has created this situation. Now, maybe in the long term, we can kind of, maybe it sorts itself out. There's no guarantee. It can get worse. It can not get better, and hopefully it doesn't, but it certainly is an issue what they did. And then we have also a problem slightly with Ruben Amorim. I think the fans are well aware of, sort of the situation that I've just described that Amorim is in, that, he doesn't have a preseason, doesn't have proper time to train with the players. You see what he's doing to try and tackle that issue. He's having players that didn't play or played less than 30 minutes in the match go out and train after the match to get extra training sessions, which is just an indication to me of that, like, he knows that they're not doing things. They're working on things in training, and it's not translating onto the pitch. And he's desperate to get in as many training sessions as possible because he believes, obviously, the more training sessions, the more routines they do, the more used to it they'll get, and they'll be able to push through, and maybe we'll find a space where we're not so absolutely horrible. Which is why he's doing these things. But there's a bit of a discussion going on right now, and fans are getting on his back a little bit, and I don't really blame them because I think that in their arguments themselves, they're not wrong. Taking Kobe Mainu from playing in the midfield to then putting him as the 10, to then putting him as a striker, to then put him back as the 10. I really do think that Ruben Amorim doesn't actually, to his fullest and best knowledge as of right now, know what is the best position and his best 11. I think there's too many players struggling. I think he hasn't had enough time with the squad, and he's sort of experimenting, or he's been experimenting a lot more in recent matches. And it's a bit of a concern because it's not a good time to kind of be doing experiments when we are not performing well and we're not playing well. And so, when you do experiments like that, it might throw off the team, and you're throwing off a team that's already struggling to perform basics on the pitch, which is an issue. It's a problem in itself. So I think, listen, I understand. I think he needs to calm down a little bit with those things because I don't think it's helping him. I think what helps him is that the fans understand that he needs more time. I think the fans understand right now that the situation that he's in, he's knowingly sort of walked into it, but INEOS have sort of created this as well, and more of the blame is going to them, which is the right thing. It shouldn't be necessarily going on Ruben Amorim. But at the same time, like, I think his interviews are very good. His press conferences are very good. He tells the truth. He's very direct, and I think the fans appreciate that stuff. And I think that stuff is helping him in his corner. What I don't think is helping him is forcing Rasmus to play. People want Xerxes to start, kind of shifting Kobe all over the place, putting Bruno in this deeper role that doesn't seem to really be working. And little things like that, obviously, are not going to help him because the fans are already agitated. We're agitated. We're angry. There's no room for too much patience. I mean, I think we're giving as much patience to the manager as we can, for the situation that the club finds itself in. And, I think Manchester United, I think Ruben Amorim has to continue to try and help himself as much as possible, because I think the situation that INEOS has created is kind of like this. I think they really thought, and Grace brought it up last time. I think, and she mentioned Dorgu on the left, and he put Dorgu on the right, which I need to say, by the way, when we discussed the player profile of Dorgu, and I don't understand why nobody is really mentioning this, and I have to assume it's probably the aggregators and the big accounts on social media. They pushed that Dorgu is a left wing back. Like, that he is only a left wing back. He's only going to play there, and we're buying him to play there. Well, that couldn't necessarily be true in some aspects, but if you look at his player profile, like Amorim mentioned, he played many times on the right, and he played as a right winger, and he played a lot of games as a right winger. He also played right back, and he played left back, or left wing back and right wing back. So it wasn't necessarily a surprise that I saw him there. I mean, I figured that maybe he was going to play him left wing back because he can play there. But obviously, he's interchangeable. You can play him on the right hand side and you can play him on the left hand side, and that's the kind of players that they're looking for anyway. I think it was a little bit, he was probably our best player in the first half, and I was a bit surprised that he took him off. Now, maybe he took him off because he wasn't there for long. He only had like 2 training sessions, and maybe that was always pre-planned, that it was going to give him like 45 minutes to taste the pitch a little bit and take him off. I don't think I would have necessarily taken him off, but again, we don't know everything. He should be fit. But maybe, they had a plan around that, and that's why I took him off, and it is what it is. But I think the situation right now that INEOS find themselves in with this manager is that they bring him in. They thought we were going to get a bounce. They thought performances would probably turn around. We'd be able to push higher up into the table. And we would be looking at somewhere between, 4th and 6th, and we'd push for that while pushing for all the fronts. I think what they've quickly realized is that they've miscalculated, that taking a squad that was already struggling and bringing in a manager that plays a totally different system is only going to cause more disruption to the team. And when you're doing it in the midst of a season and you're playing 3 matches a week, pretty much from the time he came in up till now we have, nice breaks in between for the time being till it starts back up again. I think what's really happened is they've pretty much written off the season in the Premier League, as long as he doesn't get relegated, because they're pushing this news about the summer, and the summer, we didn't want to do too much January transfer window business because we wanted to set ourselves up nicely for the summer. And there's all these stories about we're going to get Gaio Queres or Osimhen in the summer, and we're going to get Quenda for 60 million, and it's and that's all fine to a certain extent, but it's like at the same time we also get PR being pushed out from the journalists, and this comes from the club, and it seems very Glazier-ish that Manchester United is struggling with PSR, we're struggling financially. So if we're struggling financially and we're struggling with PSR, and we don't get into Europe, because right now in the league we're not in Europe, so we either have to win the FA Cup, which looks sus because of the way we're playing, and the way we struggled against Leicester City, who got obliterated by Everton the other day, and we were home and we struggled to beat them, or if we win the Europa League. But I think winning the cups with this team is a very, very hard and difficult ask, which is why I've kind of been holding back from saying that that we're going to do those things, because I don't feel confident that we are. I feel like there's going to be a match in both of those cups that we're going to get to at a certain point, and we're going to get beat because we are just not performing even decently. So I don't have too much faith that they're going to do it. Hopefully those circumstances change. We have a couple weeks till we get to the Europa League phase, and I don't know when the next FA Cup match is, but I think as long as Amorim doesn't get us near the relegation zone, I don't think they'll sack him. I don't think they can sack him anyway, because financially, anyway. But I think it's created an issue, because if we don't get into Europe and we're struggling with money now, then where are INEOS planning to get the money for Ruben Amorim? Because if there's no money provided to Ruben Amorim and we don't have a significant transfer window, and I'm talking about bringing in 5 players, because I think we need to bring in total, in an ideal world, if we had the freedom to do so, probably bring in another 10 players. Now, you're not going to do that all at once, but ideally, to get to where we want, I think we need to bring in another 10 players. And I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. My aim for the summer would be to bring in 5 quality players. We need a top striker for sure. And we need better prospects all around in multiple positions. We need to fill a bunch of areas on the pitch. And I just struggle to see how we're gonna pull that off if we're struggling financially already and we don't get into Europe. And I think it was a major misstep by INEOS, because they didn't take into account this disruption, and I think they held the players to a higher standard than they actually are. They clearly, many of them, cannot play the football that we need them to play. They can't play it. They're not built for it. It doesn't fit them. It doesn't suit their style. And we're struggling. So, I don't know how we're gonna move from that point to to the next point. And if there's no money in the summer and we're not able to make the transfers that we need, then Ruben Amorim is gonna end up getting sacked. He's gonna end up failing. Because you can't bring in a manager that plays a totally different style of football in a different system, and have him continue working with the shit. And if that happens, I think then it validates the Glinios argument even more, which is Glazer Ineos, because that will be a typical Glazer move, which is what they've done in the past. We're not going to remove these players. It's going to cost the club too much money, and the manager just needs to figure out how to work with these players that we have and make the best possible outcome. And it's clear that's not going to work. It's not going to work with this manager. That's not the correct way you do it when you bring in this sort of change. And I think it was poor planning. And at the time, I didn't think too much about it. But we sacked Dan Ashworth. Now, when I look at the hierarchy, there's only really Jason Wilcox, who is kind of a football mind. There's Blanc, but we don't know what Blanc does, and Blanc's name stays quiet. We don't necessarily know what he's doing on a day-to-day basis. We had Dan Ashworth, who was the other football mind. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not a football mind, and Sir David Brailsford is not a football mind. So, at the time, I was like, well, Dan Ashworth was asking for weird things like Gareth Southgate and Thomas Frank, and he wanted to bring in these players that I didn't necessarily agree with. So I wasn't too fussed over the fact that we sacked him. Even though it was bad that we spent money and then we spent money to get rid of him, and those things weren't good. But now I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, we removed somebody else that had a football brain and that had football experience and knowledge. We removed them out of the club, and we haven't replaced them, and we don't. I don't think we're going to replace them. We may, but there has been no clearance on that, and that worries me a little bit in terms of the project, because we're supposed to have a football hierarchy. But when you started breaking it down, so Jim Ratcliffe, listen, I don't know what it is about these people. I don't know why they accept his statement of that. He's a lifelong Manchester United fan. I don't buy that. I never bought it. Yes, I've backed INEOS since they got the agreement to come in. I never wanted INEOS. I wanted Qatar, or I wanted a full sale. If it wasn't Qatar, it could have been somebody else, but I wanted a full sale. I didn't want INEOS. I didn't want their buy, but I'm giving them a shot. I'm giving them an opportunity, and I'm still going to give them a shot and an opportunity, because I think we probably still need another year to see in what direction this goes. I think for me, the summer transfer window is going to be a big indication of what we actually have here. Is it Glinios, or is it INEOS doing things that they must do based on the circumstances, and that they're actually making some sort of progress, and fixing what the Glazers have done to destroy us. So, but let me get to the chat, and then I'll come back in with some thoughts and opinions, because you guys have been writing a lot, and I don't want to ignore the chat. So, Richard says, should have never been here until the summer, Ruben Amorim. Well, yeah, and this is the thing, like, the fan base is sort of, I mean, we've kind of mentioned this a little bit before, and it was pointed out, and now the rest of the fan base, a majority of it, has kind of woken up to this, and it's being mentioned a lot more, and I still think that maybe it can work itself out, because, again, I still have this point of, okay, it has created issues, but it can still sort itself out, because I still think that, yeah, it would have been easier, but we might have still had to go through this process anyway, because Ruben Amorim coming in the summer, for example, he may have not removed as many players as he wants to remove now, because he's getting firsthand experience with them, and he knows all about them. He might have not known that till he came, and you're not going to know that until you go into matches. So he might have not wanted to remove as many players as he does now as he would then, because he's just starting out. He has to evaluate the players. He wants to see them firsthand. He wants to see them training. He wants to see them in matches. So that would have been delayed maybe by a year. Also, you have to come in with your idea. You have to come in with your philosophy, your style of play. You have to implement it into the team. That would have started in, July instead of now. So yeah, we're taking hits now, but hopefully it can still sort of, we're still in a period where it could kind of work itself out if we do the proper things. But there's a lot of things that INEOS have to do to help RUBEN AMORIM achieve this along the way, which is the summer transfer window is going to be a big one. So I think they've backed themselves into a corner, INEOS, and they're going to have to work very, very hard, and they're going to have to be very, very precise in the summer transfer window, because I think if we have a bad summer transfer window, I think if it's deemed a failure, I think the season won't go well. I think RUBEN AMORIM will probably end up failing, getting sacked at some point. And if that happens, based on everything together, INEOS are going to find themselves at the heart of protests, because there's already talk of protests bubbling once again, and people are getting riled up, and I think I think it'll just get worse if it doesn't get addressed. So they have to find out how to crawl to the end of the season, make it there, and fix what they need to fix, because I didn't even realize that this was here. I didn't even realize that was there. I had the wrong scene on. Richard says, no, I read that one. Lyle says, it was a good weekend in the FA Cup, though. Chelsea, Liverpool, and Spurs all out. Well, yep, those are positives, line. They're all out, so that's good for us because we're still in it. And, those are 3 big teams out, which makes it a little bit easier for us, which is a good positive thing. Richard says, thanks God there's no VAR, or we would not be in the next round. Well, there was always extra time and penalties, right? So you never know exactly what was going to happen. I do understand that, we didn't play particularly well and it wasn't great, but, we could have still won it maybe. We could have got lucky in pens or something if we had to go to pens, or maybe we would have got kicked out. So, Line says, but it was so far offside, VAR should not be needed for it. And you're right about that. It shouldn't be needed because the linesman was there. He was in line with it. I don't know how he called it. We obviously got hit by rivals talking about this is how Ferguson won 13 Premier League trophies. And my response to that would be, you know what? Sometimes with the officiating that goes on, in our matches and the shit that goes against us, sometimes I do feel like maybe we were paying the refs because they're so biased against us, like 99% of the time, that I was like, it almost feels like we stopped paying them. Therefore, they go against us, and Manchester City have picked up that tab now. So, you want to hit United for 13 Premier League trophies and buying the refs. Well, City are the ones that are doing it now, Michael Oliver. So, yeah, Newcastle game yesterday was a great one. Great first half. Yeah, I didn't get to watch any of those, unfortunately. I missed basically all of the football. So, Lion says, with all these big teams out, you think it'll be United versus City again this year if we don't draw them in the next round. I mean, there's a good chance of it for sure. But I feel like we're probably going to end up getting them before the final. I think we'll meet up sooner rather than later. Which actually I'd rather have. If we got to play City, I'd rather it be not in the final. Just because let's just get them out of the way. Let's get it out of the way. I'd rather, if we're gonna beat them, let's get them out of the way, and then we'll go from there. Because knocking them out makes it even better for us. Lyle says the linesman starting position for the goal was way off. He was more focused on Bruno. Fair enough. I only saw like a clip or 2 of it, so I didn't, analyze it too much. But Grace says Delo is a twat. He should as well. Get him gone. I'm healing, turning on him. He's holding me back from reaching my potential. Send him to Australian outback and drop him with a herd of crocs. Grace, what is going on? Delo's still sleeping in the spare room, I assume. He's in the shed. You put him in the shed. What has happened in a week, Grace? You've turned on Delo. Richard says put Delo on the right and Dorgo on the left. It's not rocket science, and that's kind of the thing that I was a little bit disappointed about, and I think that's what many United fans were disappointed about because we need somebody to play on the left, and we've all clearly seen enough of Delo on the left, and I think we've all come to the conclusion that we want Diego Delo on the right. He just plays better there. He's more comfortable there, and therefore stop playing Diego Delo on the left and play somebody else on the left, which is we were hoping for Dorgu. I think we'll see Dorgu there, but I think, you know, I wasn't necessarily that surprised because, again, like, all you had to do, I mean, Ruben Amorim made a joke talking about go look on Y-Scout. Like, you don't even need Y-Scout. You can literally just Google Patrick Dorgu player profile, and any website that you click on, it'll show you that he played many, many games as a right winger. Like, when I looked it up, I was like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's played more games as a right winger than at left wing back. So I was like, I don't know where this narrative came that he is, you know, like he is like Luke Shaw, where he just plays left back. Like, he's not a winger. I think he can play all around. Now, the left wing back and right wing back position, they're technically wingers in our system anyway. So to play him there, he's pretty much playing in his position. So he could do a little bit of both, which is obviously why we signed him. But again, Amorim changing things around, kind of experimenting, kind of seeing, which is, I'm not usually against it, but I think it's sort of an issue to do it at this moment when the team is struggling to find its feet anyway, and shifting and changing things around so much. But I think he's doing it because he's been trying to press on with the same sort of idea of the team, and it's clearly hasn't really improved, and it clearly isn't working. So he's shifting things around, trying to find a answer. Which I support, but I also understand the argument that it's creating more problems, which is why we find ourselves in such a very difficult situation. Yeah, Lion, thank you. I didn't see your message till now, but yes, change the screen on the graphics. I started in the wrong scene, as you can see, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. Richard says, yes, why have we got Crystal Palace graphics? Because that was from the last time we did the Red Devil recap. I have two scenes here. Look, see, one's for and the desk grows a little bit too. But yeah, one's for the news, one's for the graphics. So I didn't notice either. So that's my bad. Should have been paying attention. Elias says Dorgu has been playing right wing for Lecce most of the season. I think that was why he played right wing back on Friday. Yeah, he's played more on the right-hand side than he's played on the left-hand side, but he can play on the left-hand side. And this is the thing that I'm saying, like, the narrative that came out from our aggregators and the Manchester United people were that, like, he is a left wing back, he's going to play left wing back. And I was like, well, but if you look at his player profile, there's no actual guarantee of that. He's almost another one similar to Delo and Maz. Like, they play on the right, but you can technically play them on the left. Like, you can put them there. Now, they might not play as good, but they can play there. So and Richard says, don't play him there in the first game. It's not fair on the kid. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know. He identified, maybe it's not fair to him, but, you know, I just think that I just think that I think that he's just trying to find an answer to the problems, because I think he's tried some things for a good amount of time now, and I don't think he's happy with the results that he's gotten from it. And I think that's why we're seeing him kind of doing some different things, some questionable things. He's changing things. He's sort of experimenting in matches, and I think that's because he's tried to stick with some stuff, and he hasn't gotten the results that he wanted, and he knows that he needs to get certain results in terms of performances from the team. And he's trying to find some answers, so he's switching things around. Gray says Dorgo was crap. That little scrub needs to go back to Lecce. Nah, he's good. He was good. He was good. Obviously, I'm gonna give him some more games, and I gotta properly watch the game to really see what he's about. But he seemed pretty good. Although I would say that the bar wasn't high for him to seem good because the rest of the team was pretty piss poor. So, Lion says I think everyone could see that Delo had to come off and Dorgu would be put on the left with Ahmed on the right and Garner in the 10. Amorim nearly got it correct. Yeah, and that was another thing too that Garnacho came on. He affected the game once again, making an impact in the game. Xerxes, getting in the game, doing a little bit doing better than Rasmus. I think Rasmus is struggling very much right now. I think Amorim should probably protect Rasmus a little bit more, kind of do what he's done to Garnacho, in a certain sense, where Garnacho started last game, but he didn't. Not last game against Leicester, but the game before he started and he didn't perform particularly well. Before that, he came off the bench and he had an impact. He started, he didn't have that same impact as a starter. Went back to the bench and he came off the bench and he had an impact. And I think maybe at this point you got to do something similar with Rasmus Højlund. Like Rasmus Højlund is clearly struggling. He's clearly having a very, very difficult time, and it's hurting Rasmus because it's not Rasmus's fault to the extent that he's getting picked. Amorim is picking him, and I think Amorim kind of has to remove him from the firing line a little bit, give the fans what they want, which is they want Xerxes. Let Xerxes go out there. Xerxes playing better than Rasmus right now, right? So, let Xerxes go out there and do his thing, and bring Rasmus on as the sub for Xerxes if Xerxes doesn't play well or if you need to rest Xerxes. And let Rasmus, come off the bench and build some confidence off of that. So Gray says Amorim is rubbish, should have got Southgate, he would have won the league. Well, the thing is that, here's the thing. If the plan was that, if we don't have money to get Ruben Amorim signings and to transform the team into this modern style of playing and this modern way of playing football, then we would have been better off technically with getting Gareth Southgate. And I'm not saying because the guy is good or he plays good football, but because you don't bring in a manager like Ruben Amorim and tell him work with the shit you have and don't get anybody in and anybody out. You can't do that with this type of manager because he doesn't play the football that is suited to this team. So if we're not going to back Ruben Amorim in properly, then we might as well have hired Gareth Southgate to keep the team that we have, not make many changes and play just some defensive counter-attacking football, because that's what he would have played. So it would have benefited United better. Now, obviously, I don't want that. I don't want to see that. I want to see the club transform. I want to see the squad transform. I think it needs to transform. It needs to be changed. But, this is INEOS creating the situation, and they certainly need to figure it out. Now, I'm going to get into a conversation because I told some of you in Grace's Discord that I watched the video on the Glazers and how they actually really acquired. It was broken down very well. I have to get you the name of the videos if you guys want to watch it independently. I forgot it, but it was new. It was only a week old, and they broke it down very excellently. And basically what I taken from that is that, it's actually worse than I already knew. Maybe some of you are well aware to this, or maybe some of you don't know. But the Glazes and the way they operate business financially, like, we know they're greedy, we know that it's all about money. But so what I seen from the video particularly is that when they started out and acquiring the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, sort of resembled a situation like how Manchester United currently is in right now, where they took over the Buccaneers. The stadium wasn't great. It needed to be redone or built a new one. The Buccaneers, never had like any success. They were shit for a very long time. Um, and the Glazers acquired them, and without using their own money. And then what they did was the they threatened the city of Tampa Bay with relocation and moving the team out of there, which would have been detrimental to the city itself financially. They threatened them and said that if you don't provide funding from the state itself, from the city itself, for us to build a new stadium, we're going to move the team. They obviously didn't agree to that in the beginning, and what the Glazers did was they got a bunch of media outlets that they had access to, put out a bunch of media stories, negative stories, going against the city and how, it's all their fault and they're the reason why, the people are going to lose their team in their area or whatever. And basically, they put a pressure and smear campaign on the state, and they were successful because they got them to pay for the stadium. So again, they got a rebuild of a stadium without using any money of their own, and they got other people to pay for it. And then they ended up winning the Super Bowl, and they profited from all of that. They took all the money without using all of their money, any of their money, and now they're just kind of like floating along. Like, yeah, we won the Super Bowl. We have a great achievement. We'll be loved forever. And now we could just, we don't have to do anything of importance. I was looking into how the Glazers can spin. Because when they took over Manchester United entered a period of excellence. And they jumped in like kind of at the early stages of that, where United were very bad for a long time. We started getting some success. We started winning things. We started looking very strong and very good. And they got involved. And they kind of rode that wave high. They jumped in, or they got in a good period. And they rode it to the peak. And they've let everything decay since then, because once Fergie left, they went the commercial route, and they commercialized it as much as possible and bring in more money off of the success. Now they've let everything rot. Everything has been destroyed, essentially. We're shit on the pitch. We're struggling for money. We're losing. We're not getting big sponsorship deals as much as we used to have. And I searched for information about how can the Glazers use the period that they did to make a bunch of money, sort of let it rot, and then if you rebuild it and make it good again, how did they stand to benefit financially? Well, one of the things is the rebuilding of the stadium, because they're not going to spend any money on building a new Manchester United stadium. If it's not, in fact, it's going to be somehow on debt. It's going to be through loans. I mean, if you look at Arsenal and you look at Tottenham, they did it through loans, which is fine if you're a club that doesn't have 657 million in debt on top of your club, which they didn't, but we do. So they're going to do it through loans. They're not going to pay a dime for it. They're going to have other people pay for it. They're going to have other people, do the work for them, which is INEOS and Manchester, the place itself, the government itself. They're going to rebuild these things for them, and they already have a good baseline of what the club is worth, right? Because they have the Qatar bid. They know that somebody out there is willing to pay $5 billion for the club. Well, if the club is worth $5 billion right now and we're shit, right, and you rebuild it, and you get us somehow successful without spending any of your own money, in the next 5 or 10 years, the price can double. They can also choose at that time. See, this is why I think they're in the strongest position they probably ever been in. Listen, if it fails, INEOS is going to get most of the blame, and the Glazers are going to hide behind INEOS like they've been doing so far. If it succeeds, INEOS will get, you know, gratification for it, glorification for it, but the Glazers are going to reap all the benefits for the financials. And then they have a decision they can make. If you rebuild it and successful, right? You can sell the club at that point for 8 to 10 billion, or you can stay for another 10 years past that or longer and just continue to take dividends out of the club, because commercial revenue should increase and everything, all the money should increase. So this is the thing, like the Glazers are always playing the long term. They're always playing the long term, and it's of concern, because I don't think there's any chance of them going, unless it completely collapses. But again, then that means detriment to the club, which is very bad for us. You're talking about in the next like 3 or 4 seasons not making it back into Europe, because that would detrimentally hurt the financials. And then they might get worried and they might look to sell. But yeah, they just won't go anywhere. And they're always playing the long game, and they're experts at using other people's money to help them make money. They've been doing it all their lives. Their family has been doing it all their lives. Their father started it. The kids learned it, which is Joel and Avram and the rest of them, and they all know how to do it, and they all do it very well. And it's just not a good situation. So, United are bull number 1 for the FA Cup draw tomorrow. Interesting. Richard says, bring back David Moyes. Well, if we're not gonna do what we need to do for Ruben Amorim and the actual project, then we might as well bring back David Moyes at that point. Grace says Amorim don't deserve money. He should work with current players. I disagree, Grace. I disagree. Because I think it's clear that he can't work with the current players. I think the current players don't work. And this is something that I've been arguing, that this is the direction of the project that you're going to do, then you have to follow it through. Otherwise, we're wasting time and we're just causing further damage to the club. We don't have a good enough squad. We don't have a good enough players. We don't have the right players. So therefore, he cannot work with these players. These players must be changed, and we must build properly. He is not the manager. He is not the type of manager, because his system and style of football does not fit what we have. So therefore, if you hire this guy, you have one option: to rip the squad apart and rebuild it to play a modern style of football. And this is where it all is going to land on INEOS once again, because if they don't do the things that are needed to push this project forward, then it was a massive mistake in getting Ruben Amorim. And it's not because I don't think Ruben Amorim is a good manager. I think he is a good manager. I think he's the right man. I think with the things he says, his ideas, I think he is. But he needs tools. He needs help. He can't just do this job. At the current state that it's in, he can't do the job that he needs to do. And so for me, I don't think we can just say he needs to work with he's obviously working with the current players right now because he's forced in this situation. And some of the players, obviously, I think there's potential for them to work out in the system, but we need an overhaul of the squad, whether people like it or not, because what Manchester United did was we spent 600 million under Eric Ten Hag. That squad got built out for him and his style of play, and his style of play is not the style of play that Amorim wants to play. Therefore, Amorim can't use a majority of these players. They just won't work. It's like Pep. Like when Pep went to City, Pep didn't use those players. He used a couple, but he didn't use a lot of them. On a long period, like over a long term, he used them temporarily. But when he got the chance to get rid of them, he got rid of them and bring in new players. Why? Because Pep Guardiola knows that I can't use these players. These players don't have certain qualities and certain characteristics that are going to work for my team, and therefore I have to get rid of them. Taking a manager like Ruben Amorim and telling him you get no money, you have to prove yourself first, and that you have to work with our current players. That's not going to work. It's going to fail. Um, so Grace said it took you all long enough to say hi. You're all banned. Grace says Axel is right about everything. Well, I wouldn't say everything, but maybe he's right about some things. Yeah. I hope he does. Axe is a good yeah, bit loony. Steph says I can't stand inverted wingers, and now we used inverted wingbacks on Friday. Baffling is an understatement. Well, the thing is sometimes that he does use Steph. He does use inverted wingers, inverted wingbacks. He's used them at Sporting. I think that's part of the interchangeability of his system. Sometimes he doesn't need to use inverted wingers. And those are the minor tactical details that I was talking about that you can change up in the system. Like, you know, for certain games, he might use inverted wingbacks, and for other games, he might not use inverted wingbacks, depending on what he wants to do. Does he want them to come inside more, and have more shots and impact the game there, or does he want them to be, putting in more crosses or whatever? And that's maybe on a tactical, like, game by game basis. I don't really have too much of a problem with it, if we can figure out how to make it effective. We haven't made it effective in terms of, from Eric Ten Hag with the inverted wingers. It wasn't effective. It didn't work. And Ruben Amorim did it now, but I still think it's a little bit early to determine if it's not going to work or if it's going to work. It hasn't paid off yet, but I still think there's time to give him. But one of the things that I also want to mention and talk about is that I think one of the things that he needs to do, and I would encourage Ruben Amorim to do it. I think he's taken risks, which you need to do as Manchester United manager. We're a club built on taking risks. It's part of our history. It's ingrained into our club. I think one of the things that he has to do is that he needs to play the wingers as the wingbacks. I think he needs to play Diallo, and I think he needs to play, I guess, Dorgu, and whoever else he can, because it seems like when we play with defenders as wingbacks, we are actually worse than when we have maybe a split. Because he splits it he has split it sometimes where he was putting Diallo on one side, then he was playing one of the defenders as the other wing back. So it was split. And that seems to kind of work out. But when we play two defenders, like if we play Delo and Maz, it just seems to be very bad overall. And I think that's because we all know he obviously plays the wingers as wingbacks. Like, he doesn't necessarily use too much. He switches it around, but the main attacking point in his Sporting team that scored many goals and was very good attacking wise was the use of the wingers there. So I think he kind of needs to go for it, and I think he needs to stop worrying about, because I think he's trying to mitigate us getting exposed by using the defenders as wingbacks. But I would say maybe the best form of defense is attack, and we're struggling with attack when we have the defenders as wingbacks. When we use the wingers, we're better at attacking, and we end up usually scoring when we have those players in that position. So I think we need to just go with that. I think he just needs to go with that, and we need to use attack as our defense, and be more attacking and more pressing and more creative. And you're gonna get that from the wingers because they're more attacking minded, they're more skillful going forward than defenders. So I think that's one of the things that he needs to do. Steph says Ahmad, Garnacho, and Xerxes, only three players that are comfortable running with the ball. But that's a huge issue. You know, that's a huge issue, Steph. You can't have that in a team that needs to be doing things like that, and we only have 3 out of the 10 outfield players. Which is what I'm saying. So, we need to figure out how to not figure out, but we need to get the proper personnel in for this manager. So, but I think one of the things that we need to do is, and I've been a little bit reluctant to do this because I wasn't trying to add fuel to the fire, because I see things bubbling on the surface in the fan base, and I think it's too early for many things. I think it's too early for Amorim out. I think it's still kind of early for INEOS out. Although you could have your doubts, opinions, criticisms, whatever you want. But I've been holding back a little bit because I don't really want to add fuel to the fire. But in doing that, I've made a mistake in that I've been reluctant to criticize both aspects as much as I probably normally would, because when you criticize the manner that it's going out as, it seems like you're pushing like the narrative of like they need to be sacked, um which I think you can criticize without pushing it that far. So I'm gonna push a little bit more, because I think you have to criticize. You have to criticize. You have to call things out. And just because you call things out doesn't necessarily mean that you're 100% Ineos or Amorim out. You're not like asking for their heads. You're just criticizing things that are going on. Now I've criticized, but I've been holding back a little bit because I just see a lot of negative things being talked about online, and I understand why, because we're in a negative spot. But for me, there's fans already like 100% against Amorim. I think that's wrong. I don't agree with it. The Ineos thing, I think it's getting to a point where it's bubbling very, very much so. I get the aspects of why, but I still think it's a little bit too early, and let's see what happens. Um, the next year or so, I think they still deserve some opportunities. And this is generally what I do with everybody. Whether it's a player, it's a manager, or I guess the upper management. I always give opportunities to them. I might not feel 100% confident in them. I might not even necessarily want them. They might not be my first choice. They might not be somebody that I necessarily feel confident about, but I give them an opportunity to prove themselves. Maybe prove people that doubt them wrong, and whatever. So I'm still continuing to give them opportunities, because I think that I just think it's a little bit too, especially for Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim is totally different. Ineos have been here for a year. Um, another year, and the summer is going to be huge for me and Ineos, because based off of what happens, um, you know, it's going to be a clear indication of what we have. Do we have a group of people that are actually trying to do a good job, or are they incompetent, essentially puppets that the Glazers hired to shield themselves? Um, and they're incompetent, and they're not going to be able to do a good job. I still think there's some things that can go in the right direction for them. They can also go in the wrong direction for them. So the summer will be a big thing for me. So Grace says sell Hoyland, Manu, and Euro, bring in Welbeck, Jordan Henderson, and Tyrone Mings. All right. Now you're just trolling us. Steph says Bournemouth and Brighton are real cup contenders this year. Both are very good teams. They are. There's still some strong teams in there, lesser big names, but they're strong teams performing. So, yeah, Plymouth did a job, and thankfully, so now Liverpool can't win a real treble. Well, I won't say a real treble. They can't win the official treble, and they can't win no quadruple either. So that's good. Lyle left us. Went for a super early meeting. Fox said, "What's up?" Said, "Yo, lads." Said, "Dorgu looks decent. I like his versatility." That was the word I was looking for. I couldn't remember it. But he's a development player, so won't start every game. Yeah, maybe, but we kind of need him. And why not? He might start a lot of games, Box, because I know Ruben Amorim for a fact. He used quite a lot of youth. At Sporting. And he had a similar situation at Sporting that he does at Manchester United. Obviously, Manchester United is on a much grander scale, and the problems are probably much larger than Sporting, and there's more eyes and there's more pressure. And the competition is more difficult, right? But he had a similar issue with the squad where the squad wasn't good enough. There was players in the squad that they weren't trying hard enough, or they just didn't have the quality to play his system. And at some point, with Sporting being a club that doesn't have a lot of money, he bring in a ton of youth, and he used a ton of youth, or players like Dorgu that is considered developmental, and he bring them in the squad, and he used them. He used them more than senior pros. So maybe Dorgu does end up having a significant, um, you know, place for the rest of the season. Maybe he does actually play quite a lot of matches. Let's see what happens going forward. Lion says something off topic, but what is that statue of Ronaldo in New York? What statue? Is a statue of Ronaldo in New York? Is it that one that they made years ago? Um, Grace, what's IBS? I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. Let me see if I pull up some news real quick, because there was a couple things that came out that we should probably discuss. You get that. So this came out an hour ago from Record Portugal, saying Manchester United officials were present at Sporting's game against Porto on Friday to watch Giovanni Quenda. United will also evaluate Quenda against Borussia Dortmund on Tuesday. So we are obviously clearly scouting Quenda. There's the obvious link between Quenda and Ruben Amorim. Talking to my Sporting friend, he likes Quenda very much. He doesn't want us to take Quenda from him, from Sporting. And I've seen Quenda a couple times. He looks very good. He's very young. He's only 17 years old. It might cost us quite a good amount of money for a 17-year-old, to be quite honest. But he has very good potential, and he has very good qualities and abilities for his age. So, and it's all good and fair, that we're scouting these players. But again, my issue is with the money. There is a disparity in the news that we are receiving, and this is why I brought in the point of before when I was explaining to you about the Glazers and what they did with the Buccaneers and how they use the media. I think they're doing the same thing with United. I think they have, being there for as long as they have, owning the club and having the money that they have. I'm sure they have friends, power, or influence over the journalists that provide us Manchester United news, and that's why we see a lot of sort of bullshit PR come out of the club, because you can't have a story that comes out and tells you that United are PSR, 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 and then we're talking about signing Quenda for 60 million, Gaio Carras for 60 million, that player for 70 million. How are we going to afford that? How are we going to afford that? Now, some people might say, well, player sales. And that's fair enough. We might be able to do it if we are able to sell players and get some wages moved around, but that's going to be very difficult. And that's not on top of if we lose the European money, right? Because nobody's factoring that in. Like, if we have 100 million to spend and we don't have European football, we lose half of that budget. We have 50 million. So we need to get into Europe somehow because we're going to lose 50 million, which is going to make it life much more difficult. And Manchester United, probably for Ruben Amorim, have to spend like 250 million, or 200 million on 5 players. Can you buy 5 quality players? If you can, come up with a list. Anybody in the chat, 5 quality players for under 200 million. And I mean quality that fit Ruben Amorim's system. That will improve the squad, because I think it's sort of difficult, and I think some of the deals that we have to do is difficult. Now, hopefully, Rashford plays well with Villa and gets some interest, that we can move him on and get those wages out. We have to figure out how to move Casemiro and get those wages out. You know. I don't know what's going on with that. So there was also something that came out of the Sun saying, I mean, it's the Sun, so I don't even know why we're going to mention it, but apparently Mateus Tell is still eyeing a summer move to Manchester United. Well, I mean, Bayern probably want around 50, 60 million for him. So, you know, how are you going to sign Tel Quenda and Victor Gyökeres or Osimhen, and we have no money? And this is the thing that I don't understand. Like, you know, there was another piece of news that came from the Barca Times saying United and Villa were willing to offer 70 million euros for Fermin Lopez and offered to double his current salary at Barca. However, the player had no intention of leaving Barca. And what? So and this is the thing that I'm saying. Like, this news comes out and it's like, so we were gonna offer 70 million euros for this fucking player, but then we couldn't go and buy a striker, like, or we couldn't go buy somebody else. And then they hit you with a piece of news saying, well, we didn't want to do too much business in January because we wanted to sort the books for the summer so we could have a good summer transfer window. So it's like, you know, where the PR that's come out of the club, and this is why I'm concerned now, because I think that I do fully believe that the Glazers have their hands deep in the media, and things that come out are being influenced by them. I do think that they control a lot of United accounts, journalists. They control a lot of the narrative and they push things. And that worries me because we only bought in Dorgu, and the transfer window under INEOS seemed very Glazerish. It seemed very Glazerish. It had a lot of Glazer imprints on it, where we took a while to do the Dorgu deal. It wasn't done quick. It wasn't done quick. It took a couple weeks to do it. It almost seemed like they purposely withheld from doing it, so they didn't do it too early, so people don't expect more at the end. Because if we did it in the first week, then by like the 3rd week, people would be expecting more deals, so they pushed it out a little bit. And then even the signing itself took a little bit till like almost towards the end of the window. So it was like it happened, you know, like a couple days before the window closed. And then, oh, we went for Tell, but Bayern were asking for this. And, you know, we tried to do another piece of business on the end of the day, but the things that Bayern asked was ridiculous and we weren't going to pay that, so it didn't work out. So sorry we didn't get anybody, but we tried. It felt very Glazerish. Very Glazerish, which is a concern because, again, we don't know how the club is running per se, but I think it's clear and obvious to the point that the Glazers have to have a significant amount of say and power, more than INEOS do. And when it comes to financial things, I think that they are obviously still dictating all the things that are happening at the club. And I think a problem that is happening is INEOS are being blamed for ticket prices going up. I actually think the Glazers are doing that. The cutting to charities and all this stuff, all this financial stuff that has come from Manchester United, stacking all the people out of the club. I think the Glazers are doing this. I think this is the Glazers' idea with INEOS. I think they come up with a plan, but I think I think these are things the Glazers wanted to do, but they weren't able to do it because people were already Glazers out, protesting and screaming at the top of their lungs, and they already hated them as much as possible. Now what they've done is they've made a deal, and who knows, they could have a verbal agreement between Glazers and INEOS that say, we will give you 25% of our shares. You have to take the blame in the media. Also, they can just give the Glazers can just give the media stories to run and run the stories that it's INEOS and it's not the Glazers. But I think when you look at it, it makes much more sense that the Glazers are the ones that are actually doing these financial cuts at Manchester United and not INEOS. Because INEOS have 25% of the football club and they're supposed to have football operations. Well, besides maybe like ticket prices, you know, and stuff like that, what is cutting funding to charities and sacking a bunch of people from the club itself in different aspects of the club, whether they were commercial business from the football aspect? You know, they didn't sack coaches. They didn't sack trainers. They didn't sack physios, right? They sacked personnel. They sacked multiple people across multiple different aspects of Manchester United itself. So I think that this is the Glazers. And I think what people have been saying that the Glazers are or INEOS is a shield for the Glazers. It is true. I never really disagreed with that. But they say it in a manner of like they say it in a manner of like it's very dark, like it's all about money, and INEOS just want to make money like the Glazers did, and INEOS is much more like the Glazers than I maybe think they are. I think they're different in different aspects, but I think one of the things that the Glazers definitely liked about selling it was that they knew regardless one way or another that they would be a shield because they're going to prop them up as these new owners. And they're definitely certainly using them. Now, I think one of the things is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and this is the only time we're going to talk and mention anything about politics. So if you put a political thing in there, I'm not even going to read it. I'm just letting you know now. But I see it sort of like this. So Jim kind of reminds me a little bit like Donald Trump in a certain aspect. Like many people say Donald Trump is selfish. He does things for himself. It's about his ego. It's about his he wants to make himself look good, and that's why he's doing all these things he's trying to do as president of the United States, right? And I kind of see a similarity to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Like, it's a bit of a vanity project for Jim Ratcliffe. He wants to leave a legacy under his name. He wants to be known as the guy that came in and changed Manchester United's fortunes around, and he'll be deemed as the hero. And I think that's why he actually did the deal with the Glazers. I don't think it was so much as some evil plan to like, hey, we could get in here and exploit this club for a lot of money. I think it was more of like Sir Jim's personality, and that like he wants the accolades and he thinks he can do it. Now, the byproduct of that is that the Glazers are using him as a shield, using him and his people as a shield. But I think for Sir Jim, I think he actually wanted he actually wants the glory of restoring Manchester United or making Manchester United great again, right? Which can be a good thing at the end of the day, because even if he's doing it at the end for himself, if he's successful, that means that we're good as well. Whereas I think the Glazers are 100% just solely about money. They don't care about the club in a certain aspect. And the only time they'll care about performances or anything is if it's something that will make them more money, which is what I mentioned earlier. If they do a certain rebuild, they don't have to pay for the club. They make other they don't have to pay for the stadium. They make other people pay for it. They're getting a brand new multi-billion-dollar stadium without paying a penny, and they're going to benefit off of that down the road. They're going to make money off of it down the road. So the only way United gets improvements is if it involves the Glazers making a substantial amount of money. Where I think as with Ineos and Sir Jim, it's more of a personal thing. Where Sir Jim has this ego and he wants his name to be associated with making United great again. So I don't know, Grace. What are you reading? Richard says, well, one of the papers said we have to sell to buy. But this is what I'm saying. They say all types of things. First, they tell you that we're going to pay 70 million for this player. Then they tell you we have to sell to buy. Then they tell you that we're struggling. We're right on borderline with PSR. But then the story the next day from the same people literally tell you that we're buying Victor Gyökeres or we're going for Harry Kane in the summer. And it's like, well, you can't do both. You are literally a contradiction. You can't be a club that is struggling with PSR and then talking about we're going to go spend 120 million on 2 players in the summer. So, there's clearly deception being pushed on us. And they pushed a lot of it, and that's what I wasn't happy about because, listen, I didn't expect much business in January. I said it from before January opened. I wasn't expecting much business. I think there was a good amount of people that were expecting maybe a change under INEOS, and they were expecting maybe a bigger transfer window than usual. It was very much a similar transfer window to what we're used to in January. So I wasn't like shocked or too it wasn't something that brought too much anger because I guess I expected it. I expected the window to kind of go the way it went. The thing is that like when I seen the stories that came out the day after the window closed, made me more upset because I was like, this is the typical Glazer PR bullshit that we got for the past 10 years, 11, 12 years, prior to INEOS being here. It was the same stories. As soon as the window closed, oh, don't worry about January. United are looking to sign 4 players for 400 million in the summer. And I'm just like, how are we going to do that? And do you think that people are actually falling for this? And I think there are some people falling for it, but I think the majority is pretty much awake to this. And I kind of felt it insulting. I felt disgusted by it, to be honest, because I was like, they take us for fucking morons. And while there are probably a lot of idiots out there, you're not gonna fool us. You're not gonna fool the ones that have been paying attention to this, and you think they think that they're gonna catch us out. They think we're just gonna sit there and be like, oh well, we'll just wait until the summer, and it's all bullshit. So and I'm hitting this line, and this is why I'm saying INEOS have, for me, their biggest chance or their biggest opportunity to prove is in the summer. And if the summer fails, then I think it's pretty much out the window for me with this project, because I'll tell you, I'll lose a lot of faith, I'll lose a lot of hope. I won't feel as confident about it anymore, and because that to me will be a clear indication that it's heading in the wrong way, and it's most likely going to fail. So, Grace says, is Jim and his Goonies going to rob a bank? But here's the thing, Grace. I think at the same time, people are unfair to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. You don't have to like him, but I think people's hate for Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS, they put out an unfair narrative. A lot of people say, when they talk about Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS, they say Sir Jim Ratcliffe is broke. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not broke. Sir Jim Ratcliffe has $30 billion. He has a net worth of $30 billion. He is not broke. He has plenty of money. The situation that he finds himself in has limited, financial aspect when it comes to Manchester United. There's also other things that they can be doing in terms of getting money into the club to use it. They can be doing some commercial things, but then again, the Glazers are still there, and they're using those commercial things to put the money in their pocket and not necessarily in the club. But you can get rid of PSR. Another problem we have with PSR is PSR and it's not really FFP, but PSR. A big issue that PSR is not only because the club have recruited and spent bad, but it also has a big issue with the debt. The debt that the Glazers have put on us is a reason why we are also struggling for PSR, and we're going to continue to struggle with PSR for the next few years at the very least, because those debt payments that we have to make get factored into the PSR. So if the debt wasn't there or the debt was cleared, then we would probably get an extra anywhere from 50 to 70 million per window or per season to spend. But we're losing that 50 to 70 million because the debt repayments that we have to make gets factored into PSR, which is coming out of our overall budget. So if United had 200 million, we automatically go to 150 because we have to pay 50 million in repaying the debt, which gets affected in our PSR balance. So, that's another kind of bullshit thing that the Glazers have put on this club and are kind of restricting the club and holding the club back because the club could be doing more. The club has the means to do more, but because the Glazers' greed and what the Glazers have done to this club, they're actually holding the club back and they're holding the club down. Then they come out and tell you, oh, we have to raise ticket prices, we have to do this, we can't donate this money to the charity, and it's like, well, technically you can, because you're being greedy fucks and repay the debt and get rid of the debt and offload it off of our club that you put onto it. It's your fault. But at the current situation, yeah, they're technically, in technicality, they are right, because we have to do those financial moves because they're not going to repay the debt. You know what I mean? But in the grand scheme of things, it's all bullshit. And everything that's going on is all their fault. And it's mainly because of their greed. So, monologue. Grace says, I look up to the Glazers because I'm only 155 centimeters, but they are also my daddies. Richard says, the 47th president of the United States put up the wall. No, we need a mugger movement. We need to make United great again. We should find out next month what the outcome is with City. The Glazers are cute. Grace, I think have you hit your head, Grace? I don't know what's going on with you. Have you hit your head, Grace? What has happened to you in the past week? I go away for 1 week, and Grace is I don't even know. She's calling the Glazers cute. She's calling out the low. Sending the low to the shed. Grace says, Eric, INEOS don't care what people think. They will spend what they want, not what the fans want. They will buy players they want, not who fans rate. If they only buy 2 players, then they buy 2. What we're going to do about it? No, I mean, listen, you're not wrong in that sense. And I do agree. And, maybe to a certain extent, it kind of has to be like that. It kind of has to be like that anyway, because I think if we had a hierarchy operating, it has to be a good balance. You have to communicate with fans. You have to listen to fans' concerns, but you can't be operating the club based off of only solely what the fans say. So it can't be one way or the other. And I do understand. And obviously, I think they do care a little bit, Grace, because I think they're trying to keep I think it makes their jobs and their lives easier if they have the fans on board with them instead of fighting against them. So I do think they care to a certain extent in terms of PR, in terms of public relations. I think they would want the fans to stay on their side. It just makes their lives and their jobs much easier. But at the same time, I think you're right. When they go to make a certain decision, for example, if they sacked Eric Ten Hag in the summer and a majority of people didn't want that to happen, they do come across as people that they would do something like sacking him in the face of the majority of the fan base and say, well, we don't really care. We think this is the right decision. So, but my whole thing more is, Grace, is that this is the things that they said to us. This is the things that was pushed to us from the news. Uh, they didn't say a lot of things. They said, a certain amount of things. The rest of it was all news that we got from, Samuel Luckhurst, Laurie Whitwell, all the journalists that came after the club was bought. And they said that INEOS want to do this, and INEOS has a plan for this, and INEOS have a plan for that. And this is what was being pushed to us from the club, because this is where the journalists get the information from, right? They get it from sources inside the club itself, somebody at the higher ups, whatever. And one of the things was that, you know, we're gonna have a real football project. And the thing is, Grace, is that if you're gonna have that project, if they only buy two players, and you're right, then they only buy two players, and what we're gonna do? Well, we're gonna protest them. We're gonna turn on them because for the totalment of the project, you can't buying two players when you need to buy fucking 10. Then you're not doing what you were saying. So everything you said was a lie. This whole thing is a sham, and therefore we need to go back out and do what we were doing, even though we weren't successful. We can't just sit there and be quiet. We need to go raise our voices. We need to go make public statements. And we got to do what we can. Even if it is unsuccessful, we still need to stand up and say something. We can't just sit there and do nothing. So, it they they have to prove that they are not Glenio, even though they have a deal, even though they sort of are, but their job is to prove that they're not. Otherwise, this whole situation at Manchester United, you think it's bad now, it'll get worse. And I'm telling you, it's going to get worse because I already see it bubbling. I already see people trying to organize protests for matches against INEOS. I already see a lot of displeasure going on. I see prominent big accounts getting angrier and angrier and calling out INEOS more and more. And I'm telling you now, like, if they don't do the job that they kind of said that they were going to do, and they don't do a good job, and the direction isn't going in the good place, Manchester United in a whole is going to get even more toxic, and it's going to get even more problematic, and it's going to be a real problem, because what's going to happen is, if they don't provide Amorim in the summer, this whole thing is going to be an utter. It's probably going to be. Here's the thing that INEOS is on their plate right now. They can either have something that goes decently well. It could be the best thing that has been done post Fergie, or it could be the worst thing that has been done post Fergie. And that's the potential that's on their plate with this Amorim thing. If we go into the summer, they get him like 2-3 players. They're not even, that good of quality because we can't, because of financials and this and that or whatever, right? And we go into next season and 10 games in, we're in 14th place. They sack Amorim. Well, that's going to go down as the worst managerial appointment ever done post Ferguson. It'll be worse than Moyes because it's just going to be an absolute disaster. Complete waste of time. And they can't really afford that, because if that happens, there will be protests, there will be riots, and there will be the unstableness that comes back into Manchester United once again. It's going to be super toxic, just like how it got, around the Super League, and after that with the protests, a lot of fighting and stuff like that. We have a chance to turn this into positive. But they need to do what they need to do. Richard says, Eric, get baseball caps with RD on it and MG. Yes, I think that's a good one. We'll get the logo on the front. On the back, we'll have Make United Great Again. Going across the little thing in the back. That's actually a very good idea. I like that. Lion says, I'm telling you, Rannick would have sorted United out if he actually went in as director of football. We have what he actually was meant to do after they sacked him to. two others have had the position. Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think his ability to identify very good players with quality that performed, I think was very clear by just the list that he gave off the top of his head in a couple press conferences, and all those players were good. And I think he would have been able to get us good players for good deals, um, identified those players, and we could have rebuilt that squad properly. And they sacked him, and it was a huge mistake, and they should have never done it. And I still hate them for doing that because I think it was wrong and it was a disgrace. Um, Grace says nothing was wrong with me. I just have fun characteristics. My persona changes more than Mickey Fold. Well, fair enough. Unstable, unstable like Grace Fold. Yeah. So but listen, I just wanted to come on here, get some thoughts and a little bit of discussion out. Because I didn't have too much to talk about. I don't know what happened. I felt like from the beginning of the week to the match we played, I felt like there was a lot to talk about. Then today I was like sitting here and maybe I listened to too much content and too many people, and I kind of felt like, yeah, I've heard all the points and I've kind of come to a resolution. So I kind of felt like I didn't really have much to talk about today, but I know it was important and I wanted to speak to you guys, but it was important to just do a show for the week because I don't know what's going to happen next week. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do any shows during the week. There's a little bit of uncertainty, although I highly doubt it, but I just don't 100% know. And then, obviously we'll have a Red Devil recap. So I wanted to get a show in. I wanted to talk to you guys. Yeah, I had plenty to say, but it was just like there was no trending news today. It was very quiet in terms of topical stuff. So, um, and for me personally, like I was listening to stuff all week, and I was, thoughts. Even at random times when I'm at work, there was things popping into my head like, well, this is an issue and that's a problem. And I went to go do the show today, and I just kind of felt like I've already done the therapy session throughout the week, and it's sort of resolved in myself, and I felt a little bit empty. Like I felt like I don't really have anything to push on too much. Because I feel like I've kind of went through the whole thing. I've heard the whole discussion. We've talked about potentials of what can go wrong and how we sort it out, and I kind of internalized that. Um, so there's probably some other things. But what I'm gonna do is what I've been kind of doing for the rest of the week. I think there was one other thing that I didn't mention. Oh, there was this point that I wanted to bring up that I didn't bring up. So before we get out of here, I'll say it. There was discussion. We've had it on here. I think Grace has mentioned it a couple times, but Axe has been the big pusher of it, and he's not here. But which would have been good if he was here because we could have had a bigger discussion about it. But they're not the only people that say this. There's many people. I see many people on social media saying the same thing, talking about that. Amorim has to play a different formation, and not play the 3-4-2-1. And my thing has always been like, and I said it when Ten Hag was here, and I think one of the things that was disappointing with Eric Ten Hag was we expected the Ajax system, we expected the Ajax style of football, and he kind of came to United and made it clear that that's not going to happen, and he didn't do that, and he did a different thing, and it didn't work. Um, and I've been pushing back, saying that I don't want him to change the formation. I don't want him to change the system or the style of play. I think we need to stick with it and go through this because I think either way, whether you do it now or you do it later, you have to do it. So you're gonna have to go through the process one time or another. And from being a professional procrastinator, it's better to get the shit done or to start it as soon as possible so you could get through it and get it over with, then put it off, and then deal with it later. Because usually more problems arise when you push it further down, and then it becomes a worse situation. But just for like a little bit of context, like Ten Hag tried a 4-3-3 for 2 games in his first season and abandoned it because we got humiliated. He tried a 4-3-3 for 2 games in his second season and abandoned it again the same season. And that season we finished 8th with the 4-2-3-1. The season with the 4-2-3-1, we were 13th in the table before he got sacked. So the 4-2-3 was a disaster. 4-2-3-1 was awful, and now a 3-4-2-1 is the problem as well. You know, and this is why I'm saying I the 4-2-3-1 hasn't really been that good for us anyway. So I don't think it's a numerical thing. I don't again, I don't know what all the emphasis is on about the numbers, because it's more about the shape and the ideas and the tactics. The numbers 4-2-3-1, 3-4-2-1, 4-2-3, they don't seem to it's not that big of an impact. Like if Amorim woke up tomorrow and played a 4-3-3, I don't think you're going to see much improvement. If any improvement at all, it might be worse. I don't think the numerical things are the issues. I think it's the technical things with the players, passing the ball, being able to do one-touch passing. I don't understand why our players, what is it that we have managers that come in here and they tell you that they want to play quick and they want to play one touch and they want to play where the players are they're taking too long on the ball, and no manager can get these players to make one-touch passes. They all take 3 or 4 touches. And they tell you that they're like, this is not what I want. But then somehow it falls back on them. So it's like, I don't understand that aspect, because it's like, well, clearly it's all right if you say like one guy isn't good enough as the manager and that guy and another guy's not good enough as a manager. But I've seen this through too many managers already, and it's happened through too many different players to be just like it's specifically the manager's fault. I just think that it's a technical thing. I think it's a personal, it's a personnel issue. It's I just don't see how these formations are necessarily the problem. For me, it's the players. It's their mentality, their work rate. It's the rotten environment filled with entitled, overrated, and overpaid players. You're not going to find a system that prevents you from at least working hard. These players are jogging on the pitch. And the saddest thing about United on and off the pitch is it doesn't feel like United in any way apart from the fans. It's unrecognizable, which is the sad part. But I think that last part is important. If you have players that don't have the correct mentality, they don't have the correct work rate, ability, the environment is rotten, maybe they're overrated or they're overpaid, there's not that hunger. There is no system in the world that you're going to get that is going to make these players play better, because those characteristics, those qualities, those are the minimum basic standards you have to have as a footballer. That a good footballer is a good professional footballer. And if you don't have those things, or those things aren't the highest standard as possible, then no matter what formation, no matter what system you play in, it's going to be shit. So again, I'm looking at it as like, well, I'm looking at Amorim's team, and I understand he has sort of a different problem and different aspect, but at the same time, there's many issues that are currently going on in the squad now that was going on with Eric Ten Hag for 2.3 seasons. So is it, for me, in my head, it cannot be 2 different managers with 2 different ideas, 2 different personalities, 2 different upbringings, 2 different, brains, 2 different ideas that are having the same exact issues, and that they cannot fix these issues. These 2 professional managers. It cannot be that it's literally all their fault, 100%. It has to be the personnel. So this is why we need to get we need to get players in for Ruben Amorim. But listen, we'll talk next week. Because the Super Bowl is coming on. I gotta go get prepared for that. I'm gonna watch it. American settings today. I will say Kansas City Chiefs are probably going to win it. Not only because they're a good team, but also probably because it's scripted and Taylor Swift has to be in the thing. So I assume um, that's going to happen. Lion says any system wouldn't work with this team. The team is shit, very poor recruitment. Just like Reem said, mistakes have been made in the past, and absolutely. And I think Lions, to that point, even if you got the system right, if even if you identified the system and the formation that suits this group of players the best out of every other system and you know formation that you could possibly pick, right? Let's say we identified one. We know 100% this system fits the players perfectly and it's best fit for the squad as a whole, right? I still think with this group of players playing in that system, we would still be average because the squad as a whole is average. I don't think we would reap any. We wouldn't go anywhere. We would still have to build on the squad either way. I don't think it's worked necessarily. So Richard says, "Stay safe, everyone, and go Eagles." Lions says, "Who is the halftime show?" I believe it's Kendrick Lamar. And Lions says, "Chiefs, baby." There we go. We got a rivalry going on in there already. Yeah, before we get out of here, I just need to check. I just want to check the the schedule. I'm looking at the schedule to kind of see what's going on. So Manchester United, we play we're playing our next match is Tottenham away. That's February 16th. And what day is that? The 16th is a Sunday. Okay, so that's good news. So we will be back for Red Devil recap at the very least on Sunday after the Tottenham match. We better win. We need to win, but we better win. And we'll be there for that. And then for the rest of the remainder of the week, we probably won't go live. But if I get an opportunity to, I will go live and I will announce the live. So be on sort of the lookout in the community tab as I usually notify in the community tab. So it was a good show. You know, small day, not a lot going on, but I think decent discussion today. Kind of made it up on the fly too. I didn't have a lot of time to prep the show, so it was kind of just winging it today, which you know, it was all right, not bad. I liked it. It was good. But yeah, I'm gonna go get ready for the Super Bowl and stuff like that. So everybody take care, be good. And worst comes to worst, we'll all see each other and we'll talk on next Sunday, a week from now. Any topics for comments? Hmm. I don't know. Tomato ketchup. No. Maybe we could do something like give me let's do 5 signings. That would fit Ruben Amorim's system that Manchester United need to make in the summer transfer window. And they have to be realistic. Don't say like Kylian Mbappe. 5 signings that you would like to see or that you would think would fit Ruben Amorim's system and style of play that would be good in the Premier League that we should be looking at. And maybe it's a player that's not necessarily one that's been mentioned, but you know, something like that. Lions has bumped into Onan at the Farmers Crazy Adventure. Oh god. Yeah, maybe something like that. 5 players you know, that you would like to see Manchester United go get in the summer that are realistic and are within a budget, you know, and we can't don't put 100 million players. That's not going to work. Make it realistic. Make it players that we can actually go get. 5 players in. I think we all know the outs, so we don't have to do that. So, Alien spaceships and tomato ketchup. Yeah, well, your writing is very, very good. So, but I'm gonna get out of here. I'll catch you all later. Be good. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for everybody that smashed the like button. Thank you to anybody that subscribed. You've all been good. We'll see each other next week. At the very least, we'll see each other on Sunday after the match, and we'll speak then. And everybody, enjoy. If you're watching the Super Bowl, enjoy. I'm sort of neutral. My team's not in it, but I do think the Chiefs will probably win it. And maybe we'll put a little bit of money. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. YouTube, don't ban me, please. I'm not advertising gambling. But maybe we put a little bit of money on the games, make it a little bit more exciting. But listen, I'll catch you guys later. Be good. Take care. We'll speak very, very soon. Until next time, take care.